Welcome to another book review. I am ahead of the curve and a different scenery. I'm now at university, so it's kind of better if I'm honest. It's the plant there and the picture there, pretty good. Right, so in this book review, I'm going to discuss The Tunnel by Ernesto Sabato, and it was written in 1948. So I'm going to start off by saying this is probably one of the better kind of books that I've read in a while, mainly just because it is short and sweet, and to me it kind of feels like on the same level as Dostoevsky or Camus. Camus' The Stranger can probably be related to this book or compared because of its length, but in terms of like narration even, it's kind of a bleak narration, and the chapters are really short as well, which is just how I like it. Again, I really like short books. I think, even if I was going to write something, I wouldn't make it really long, unless I needed to, of course. But yeah, that is kind of my issue with Dostoevsky. Like, I feel like obviously he's got a lot of content in his books, but I don't necessarily feel like he needs to like kind of put so much in his story. It's kind of unnecessary. So in that regard, I kind of prefer Camus, like the simplicity of Camus, and of course this book. So the narrator is Juan Castel, and he's basically a painter, and he's kind of, at the start, he kind of is kind of self-aware, like he's telling this story from beginning to end, and basically he meets this this woman at the art gallery. I think it's, yeah, the art gallery. And she kind of stares at one section of the painting, and he kind of appreciates her noticing this section of it because it's kind of the most intricate part, which everybody else seems to leave out and ignore. And now the character of Juan is, he's fairly introverted, and he's kind of a weirdo. He's kind of a creep as well, but he has genuine intentions. It's just that he's a bit deranged. He's not insane, but he's kind of, yeah, creepy. Yeah, I don't know, I'm kind of searching for a word to describe him, but he's kind of like the underground man, and the guy in Camus' The Stranger, Monsieur, or, yeah, I can't remember his name, but yeah, kind of a mix between the two, but in his own regard or right, the same, a character in itself. So that's kind of the plot. It's like he kind of becomes obsessed with this girl who notices something in his painting, and then he kind of goes on a lustrous rampage after her. Yeah, I mean, this is the first book I've read by Sabato, and it was recommended to me. Well, I watched G.C. McKay's video, his review of it, and I think it was recommended to him, and then he made a video of that reviewing it and basically saying how good it was. And I got it because of that, and yeah, I can't say I was disappointed. It's just a brilliant book. It's probably one of my favourite pieces of literature, if I'm honest. I kind of appreciated, like I alluded to earlier, that his writing is concise, like Camus. Well, yeah, Dostoevsky can be concise, it's just he goes a bit too far in his length, like Demons being 800 pages. And that's an issue I have with like modern fiction, is that it just goes on for too long. Yeah, I mean, even Stephen King, I do like The Shining, and I do like Dead Zone, but again, with Dead Zone, and maybe I'll review that someday, but Dead Zone is a book that I like. I also really love The Shining, but I think less in The Shining, but in Dead Zone, I felt like, there were parts that just didn't need to be in there. And so I like the plot, it's just, it felt a bit like filler a lot of the time. And that's really why I don't read much kind of fiction. I mean, well, I do, it's just I don't read much mainstream fiction, like I haven't read all of Stephen King's books, or like, all of whoever else you could probably point a finger at, like Harry Potter. I've never read that. It's for many reasons, but one of them is just that I feel like, firstly, non-fiction gives you the answers up front, and it's kind of more honest in its approach. Maybe not in philosophy though, but I kind of trust the existentialists and kind of these authors that I know are kind of going to be reliable. And so I do take a risk sometimes, and read a book that is a bit long and I know is going to be a bit of filler. But yeah, some stories are worth reading, to be honest. So it's kind of a sacrifice I'd make in that regard. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I kind of need to go into spoilers to really like analyze and discuss this book, because a lot of what happens is kind of mental. So basically, if you don't want to watch on because you want to read the book, basically go and read it. It's probably one of my favorite, as I said, it's probably one of my favorite pieces of literature I've ever read. Definitely one of the best existential pieces I've ever read. It's a brilliant like detective, well, not detective, like a crime thriller type of genre. It's a lot like that. So even if you look at it and you might feel like you don't really like existential fiction, I think you'll like it even if you appreciate like thriller kind of stories and plots and characters, like really in-depth characters. So yeah, I highly recommend it. So go and read it and then come back to my review if you wish to delve into some spoilers. So yeah, I'm just gonna go into the spoilers now. So I'm warning you, and here we go. So delving into the main character, he is a very delirious but also slightly amusing and satirical character. It's only because sometimes you kind of wonder what the hell what's going on in his head. You're kind of confused about like some stupid decision that he's making, and he really doesn't need to do that, but he does it anyway, and at the expense of looking like an idiot. And so he's like very socially awkward, but at the same time a fairly intelligent individual, I'd say. Something that I found was really like interesting in contrast to one another is how his thoughts are like, they're very rational, but I suppose you could say like his actions are just completely absurd. Like he'll think something through like very carefully and intelligently, and it might be a bit absurd, you know. You might be like, what the hell are you doing? But like the thought itself is like genuinely sane, and then when you go to act it out, like everything just falls, and he just falls into his impulses. It's yeah, he can, like, his actions are impulsive, I guess you could say, and his thought to act is rational. So again, the title of the book, now this is something I really like about it as well, is that the title is actually it's kind of a mystery. You're kind of reading it through thinking, what's this title? What does it mean? The tunnel. And then it gets to that point towards the end, which you know I'm talking about, and it kind of just goes into like the tunnel, and it's actually his state of mind. And I think what I got from that is, in a way, he kind of meant that, so he was in a tunnel, but he was also saying how other people kind of stick to their routines in life. They don't kind of derive out of it. They kind of stay in it out of fear, out of the alienation of being different. And so he alone is stuck in this tunnel because of his kind of mental disability. I don't know if you want to call it that, or you know, deliriousness, whatever you want to call it, right? But so he's stuck in this tunnel, of a psychological tunnel. But then you could also say the average person is stuck in a tunnel because they're not kind of being open-minded enough, or like, you know, not striving to be more than what they are going for. And so to me, it strikes me as a lesson as we're all in the same tunnel. It's just, you can try and escape the tunnel by going, I don't know, to the roof, right? But there's still a tunnel. So to kind of put this in more philosophical terms, we're all stuck in our own heads. And I think that's the metaphor of the tunnel. It's kind of our own head, our own mentality. We can't actually escape outside of our brain. Now, whether you meditate and you want to, you know, dispute me on that, you can. But as far as I'm concerned, I think the tunnel is a metaphor for the limitations that we consciously suffer with or experience. So to discuss this woman that I mentioned, you know, Maria, as you'll know, she is basically a whore. Very two-faced person. And it's kind of unfortunate that he went for her or found interest in her. But I think at the end of the day, like, I think it was something Nietzsche said actually, in Beyond Good and Evil. It was on the lines of, we seek what we attract, and at the first kind of sign of attention that we get, at the first kind of sign of that someone might give us, we latch onto it because, you know, it's so scarce to us. And so he latched onto her because he's never actually experienced or talked to somebody who was of the same thinking or thoughts. But the only difference really between him and her was that, well, I mean, none of them are really genuine individuals. I mean, he is kind of, and she is kind of, I guess, but basically they're both, to me, felt like they have their own tunnels, I guess you could put. But she was in one tunnel and he was in the other. You know, they had like different desires and goals, and obviously she had definitely very different goals to him in the romantic department. So yeah, she was pretty much cheating on him, and she didn't, I don't know, I guess she didn't really believe in love, or romanticism was something of a joke to her. I think there is some dialogue on this actually throughout, but I can't remember exactly what was said. But yeah, it's and I think today the dating kind of sphere, it's maybe it's some kind of, I don't know, to me it feels like important to recognize how romanticism was kind of dead, you know, between them. The main character, Juan, he wanted this kind of like closeness, and this kind of trust, and she, I don't know, she sort of rejected it in a conventional sense. And so it's a lot like kind of what we do to ourselves today. You know, a lot of people, you know, like to be free in their actions and so forth, but, you know, freedom takes on a lot of responsibility, and this is something that people just overlook. You know, they think they can just do whatever they want and they'll get away with it and they won't have to pay the consequences. Like, every action has its consequence, whether it's a morally good action, you know, it doesn't matter. It will, in some regard, have a negative effect on something. And of course there is an infinite good and bad that you could probably do. Like, I would say Hitler did infinitely bad things, and I don't know, I'm not going to say Mother Teresa, by the way. I think, like, you know, a doctor, for example, like in his career, he does an infinitely good thing. But at the same time, these things have consequences, you know, like what if a doctor fixed someone who was a criminal and then that criminal wants to kill somebody because they survived? So I think that there is a consequence for every single action that we do, that we commit to. What I did find interesting though was when Juan kind of tracked her down and saw her with another guy. He wanted to plan it out, you know, like rationally. He was planning out rationally. But when the opportunity actually arose, he actually just plunged her in the chest. I think it was multiple times, but what really struck me was Maria's indifference to her own death. She didn't actually scream. She didn't really care, and I think that was just an explanation of her relationship with him. She just seemed indifferent most of the time. Life just felt like a dead game to her, and so he was the one suffering emotionally because of her behavior against him. And she, you know, it's like she didn't really care that she was being plunged in her stomach, in her chest and stomach. So I just found that really interesting, how she just didn't care when she was being stabbed to death. Yeah, it was interesting. But yeah, that can kind of explain her coldness of personality, and whether she actually cared about Juan is debatable. I think maybe she did care about him in some, maybe in her own way. You know, like cats, for example, they care about their owners, but just in their own way. You know, they're not like dogs, whereas dogs like jump all over you when you greet them. Cats are just like, I don't know, they don't really care, right? So I think she was kind of indifferent, like a cat would be to its owner, whereas Juan, he would be attentive to the owner if he was a dog. So even if she did care about him in her own way, that still wasn't enough to not cheat on him. yeah, to be honest, overall, it's quite a tragic book. No one was really left off better than they were at the start. You know, we have these two characters. One of them is emotionally indifferent, and Juan is just he's again. I don't want to call him a lunatic, but he's like a black and white character. It's like, I mean that in the sense that he thinks intellectually, but the action that comes from that intellectual thought is lunacy. He becomes a lunatic when he acts out. And I just found that really fascinating. So yeah, all in all, it's just a really like short and sweet piece of literature that I'd recommend to literally everybody. It's just so short, so rereadable. It's literally like the traits of an amazing book, as far as I'm concerned. Just so rereadable, and you can really analyze the characters and the story, the plot. You know, there's so much to it to go over and to even discuss like I am now. So yeah, it's I just thoroughly enjoyed it. To be honest, I just loved it. Yeah, amazing. So yeah, thank you very much for watching as usual. I don't actually have a physical copy with me because I would be waving it around like I usually do. But no, it's at home. I don't have it with me because I finished it like a few weeks ago actually, and yeah, I wanted to write out my review really and just kind of get my thoughts around it, you know, get my head around it, and kind of, I don't know, acknowledge the book and the story, the characters, give myself time to really think about it, because it's just that sort of book, you know. I just love those kind of books that stay with you. Yeah, they kind of latch onto your being, so to speak. So yeah, if you're not already following my Instagram and my Goodreads, the links are in the description, and I will see you in the next video. Au revoir.